What's up? What's down? What were the major calls? And how will it affect the economy? The big business questions on the Business Hour with Heather du Plessis-Allan and MyHR on Newstalk ZB.
Right now, it is 6:07. So, of course, question now is, how are Kiwis going to feel when New Zealand starts getting cosy with Donald Trump? Former Prime Minister Helen Clark this morning on the radio suggested the government might want to rethink its moves to get even closer to the US.
But given the general feeling in the New Zealand public towards the election of President Trump, I can't think that it would be a popular thing to do, to be seen to be strategically realigning with an administration which is volatile and quite unpredictable on foreign policy.
Jeffrey Miller is a geopolitical relations expert at Victoria University and with us. Hey, Jeffrey, welcome back.
Good evening, Heather.
Has Helen got a point?
Look, I think everything will be on the table here. We're going to have a new US administration. That always means a reset. So it's a big question whether the US will be keen to go through with AUKUS under Donald Trump. Remember, this was a Biden initiative. So, everything is on the table from both sides. If it is going ahead, will they want New Zealand still involved in Pillar 2? And will New Zealand want to be involved? If you're Christopher Luxon and this centrist trying to position yourself to capture that centre middle ground, do you want to be associated with Donald Trump? I mean, there are huge numbers of questions here for New Zealand when it comes to foreign policy.
Okay,
It's really big.
Let's look at what Trump's calculation might be. So on AUKUS, the thing that he will like about AUKUS is that it is aimed at China, which he doesn't like. But then the thing he will not like about AUKUS is the cost of the thing, right? So how does that play out? What do you reckon weighs stronger on him?
That's right. And Donald Trump is very, very transactional. So if he thinks it's a good deal, if it's in the interest of the United States, perhaps he'll go through with it. If he doesn't think that the US is getting a good deal, he'll make the likes of Australia, the United Kingdom, pay up a lot more.
Yeah.
I just think it really remains to be seen whether, if AUKUS is continued with, whether he'll want to have a bit player, as he might see it in New Zealand, getting involved. This was the Biden strategy. You had this lattice work of all these agreements across the Pacific, and Joe Biden was very interested in climate change in the Pacific and re-engaging with Pacific Island countries. I think Donald Trump is all about great powers, and if he wants to stick it to China, he simply will. He will do it unilaterally. He won't feel the need to, set up all of these multilateral alliances or to continue with them with the likes of New Zealand necessarily. But we will have to see how things develop. Of course, Winston Peters is putting a brave face on things, and he has some good connections. He was foreign minister, of course, the last time that Donald Trump was in the White House. So there may be some chances there for him to use his connections, and he was on your program yesterday talking about that. So, let's wait and see.
Did I hear him saying that we got very close to an FTA with the US under Trump?
I did hear that. And
is that believable?
I wonder where that's really come from. I don't really recall that really being on the table. Of course, Donald Trump pulled out of the CPTPP pretty much on his first day in office back in 2017. So I think it's hard to believe that really there was a bilateral free trade deal for New Zealand in the offing back during Trump's first term. But yes, Winston Peters is trying to put a brave face on things. He's really put everything in the basket of building closer ties with the United States. He did that the last time around. He's been doing this for the last year. And Christopher Luxon and the government has really very much gone along with that. It's been a huge sea change when it comes to New Zealand foreign policy, given that New Zealand's biggest trading partner is China. And neither Christopher Luxon nor Winston Peters have visited China yet in the past year. It's quite striking, the longer that goes on, that they haven't made that trip to China. Todd McClay is there at the moment. But there will be a chance next week for both Christopher Luxon and Winston Peters to reconnect with their Chinese counterparts if they choose to do so at APEC in Peru. And Christopher Luxon could shake hands, perhaps have a bilateral meeting with Xi Jinping. And if that's on offer, I think he should take that opportunity, because things are going to get pretty tough with 10 to 20% tariffs from the United States if that does come in. So there are lots of opportunities, lots of other countries that New Zealand could work with, and China really is the big one.
You think that Chris Luxon will get the ick about having to get too close to Donald Trump?
Yes, I think the calculations were very different from Winston Peters and Christopher Luxon. Winston Peters, I think, will be quite happy to work with a Trump administration. When Jacinda Ardern had a meeting with Donald Trump at the UN General Assembly back in 2019, he described it as a triumph. He put out a special press release about it. I don't think that Christopher Luxon would necessarily see things in the same way. You know, Christopher Luxon is positioning himself as the big centrist, and I don't think that Luxon will necessarily be that keen to be associated with Donald Trump. Winston Peters, I think, will be. So, it could be quite interesting domestically here whether that leads to some divides in the coalition over the direction of New Zealand foreign policy. It really will be very interesting whether this pro-US stance continues. That's been very much the theme of the past year. But I just think everything's going to be on the table right now, and everything's going to be up for debate, AUKUS and everything, really, because of Donald Trump coming into the White House. Is going to look like it's going to be a very different administration to the Joe Biden administration.
It's going to make your job very fun, Jeffrey. Thank you very much for your time. Jeffrey Miller, geopolitical relations expert at Victoria University, is making everybody's job fun, frankly. If you're politics adjacent, it's fascinating now.
Experts think there could be more plot twists in the US presidential race. Democracy Project's Jeffrey Miller says Kamala Harris is even making gains in an historically Republican state.
A new poll has shown Kamala Harris is leading slightly in Iowa, and that is not meant to be a state that's in play at all.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are turning their attention to voters sitting on the fence as they enter the final days of the US presidential race. Jeffrey Miller from the Democracy Project says securing them this late is a challenge.
Everything is now baked in. A large number of Americans have already voted in early voting, and there's a very small group now that can be convinced.
And Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are turning their attention to voters sitting on the fence as they enter their final days of the US presidential race. Jeffrey Miller from the Democracy Project says securing them this late in the race is a challenge.
Everything is now baked in. A large number of Americans have already voted in early voting, and there's a very small group now that can be convinced.
That is news.